Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And hello everybody, and a very good day to you all out there, whether you're watching in England, Australia, or just around the world as cricket fans. So welcome along. It is the Cricket Badger podcast. It is Gaurav Ayan's YouTube channel. It is James and it is Lucas, as it's been throughout this Ashes series. And let me start, Lucas. Hello to you, by the way.
Hello.
We started off this series. If I recall, your series prediction was 5-0 Australia. My series prediction was actually 3-1 Australia. I came into this thinking, is Bazball all it's cracked up to be against a very good side? Would Bazball actually manage to get through it unscathed? You came in it thinking Australia are just going to absolutely thump Bazball. Bazball's a joke. I reckon I'm probably the happier of the two of us at 2-2 at the end of this series.
Well, we discussed before the show, try not to antagonise me, James, because I've had 3 days to calm down. This is not a good start by you, James. But we're not going to. I'm not going to act like an idiot. I'm going to stay calm. I did say 5-0. Well, 2 tests in, we're 2-0 up, and wasn't my prediction looking good? No, I'm very disappointed. We all know that I wanted to win this series. Retaining the Ashes wasn't enough for me. It wasn't enough for Cricket Australia. They've all said that we want to win this series, and we failed. Yes, we've retained the trophy, but the bigger picture, we failed yet again. And the next series comes to England, will be 25 years since we have won in England, and I think that's a little bit unacceptable. But well done, James. Well done.
Sorry, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, like I said, you're the happier, as you should be, because you've stopped us from winning the series, which we wanted. So luckily, I didn't do this show on the night because I'd have a different attitude, which we don't want to see. But of course, I'd remain respectful, of course. But you deserve to be the most happy out of our 2 games. I'm not happy at all.
Well, let me fire back at you, because I'm going to actually defend the Australians here against your venom and bile. You've got it in for Pat Cummins. You basically don't think Australia. I mean, obviously, from 2-0 up, you'd be hoping you're going to get at least a series win. But Pat Cummins has come across to England. He's won the World Test Championship. He's led the team throughout that process to actually lift the World Test Championship. He's taken you through an Ashes series. You've got the urn on the plane coming back home to Australia. What more could the bloke do?
Well, like I said, James, we retained last year. Okay, that was a step forward. Even retaining it, not last year, 4 years ago, even retaining it was very hard in England. We've never done that in 20 years. Okay, last time he retained it under Tim Payne. That's good. Now we wanted to go that one step further. It's the way we were talking about it. Retaining wasn't enough, and I think when you hit the nail on the head. When you're 2-0 up, you would think you would at least win the series, win 2-0 up. And I think that's been a massive fail. Okay, if we were down 2-0, 1-1 or whatever, I'd be more open to it. Still be a waste. But when you're 2-0 up in any series and you lose, something has to give or change. I know I've been Pat Cummins' harshest critic. I've got no problem with Pat Cummins, the bowler. Let me be clear on this show. No problem with Pat Cummins, the bowler. World class, probably go down to one of our greatest bowlers. But the captaincy, I've smashed him to pillar to post, and rightly deserved, in my opinion. I'm not going to back down from that. I think he's made bad errors. I don't think he should captain after this series. That remains to be seen if he wants to stand down. I don't think he will. I think he might have to be pushed aside. But I'm not going to back down of my smashing of Pat Cummins, the captain. I generally believe Steve Smith should be captain. I generally believe if Steve Smith was captaining that 3rd test, and if we were 2-0 up, trust me, we would have won that series. That's my opinion. You can debate that. But that's where I stand on Pat Cummins' captaincy, not the bowler, the captain.
So if I was going to give you Ben Stokes as a captain,
Yep.
make him Australian. I mean, he's basically New Zealander into English. We're going to make him Australian for the purposes of this process. Would you take him over Pat Cummins in the way you've seen him captain over the last 5 tests?
Yeah, I would. I would actually. Now, the key word was the captain. Mind you, Cummins, the bowler, didn't have a good series either, with all due respect. Had a poor series by his standards. But yeah, I would take Ben Stokes the captaincy. Now, I know Ben Stokes was defensive in the first test, and he's came out and said, well, we're not going to change our ways. We all know he would. But I would take Ben Stokes the captain over Pat Cummins the captain any day of the week. I wouldn't even debate that with you if you want to turn that into a debate, James.
Well, I'd keep Ben Stokes, thank you. I've been really impressed with Ben Stokes. I've been all the way through. I've said before on this podcast during this series that when he was first muted as being England captain, I wasn't particularly excited. But I don't think he's done a hell of a lot wrong. You know, you give him 1,000 tasks that he's done since he's taken over the job. He's maybe got 2 or 3 things wrong. I mean, that's not a bad return in my view, because everybody's human, everybody makes mistakes. And I think Ben's been absolutely superb. I think he's led from the front. He's not asked anybody to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. And, despite the fact that he was on one leg for half the series or most of the series, and he couldn't bowl as many overs as I'm sure he would have liked to have done. I think, it's a couple of the innings that he played with the bat were reminiscent of 2019. And absolutely superb series from him. So I can't complain about Ben Stokes one bit. And I think it's bizarre for me because I still have some reservations, I have to say, about some of the things about Bazball, but it doesn't half sweep you up. Even to the extent that declaration in the first test, when I was actually watching it live, I was thinking, yes, good declaration. And I sort of sat back and thought, actually, would I have done that? Probably not. But, it gets you, it grabs you and it takes you with. And that's what they're trying to do, isn't it? All this stuff about, we're going to save Test cricket, I think is a little bit. I don't quite get that.
No.
English Test cricket doesn't particularly need saving.
No.
And you go further afield to Afghanistan, West Indies, etc. I'm not sure Ben Stokes playing a run of ball 60 is going to make any difference to whether the West Indian crowd turn up at the next Test series. So I don't think England on its own can save Test cricket. It's not England's job to save Test cricket. It's the people in the ivory towers in the admin roles that need to be looking after Test cricket on a global scale. But I can't argue with Bazball. I can't argue with the fact that you sit and watch a session and they're going along at 6.5 and over, and they're flailing. Not flailing is the wrong word, because they're actually playing proper cricket, but in an aggressive style, knocking the likes of Cummins and Hazelwood and Stark around the park, who are very fine bowlers. And it is exciting. You can't deny that. I mean, if I've offered you Ben Stokes over Cummins, you've taken Ben Stokes as captain. Yeah. I'm now going to offer you Bazball in the way that England have played it over the last 3 Test matches against Ozball in the way Australia have played their cricket.
No, I think our style holds up. We were up 2-0, but I think the way it was executed, that's the problem I have. So no, I'm keeping Ozball.
I actually in the question said ignore the first 2 tests and the way England have played their cricket over the last 3 tests.
Well,
I think there's an argument to say that England. I mean, Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes had both said we're going to take this as far as we can. We're not quite sure where the line is with this now. And I think in the first 2 tests they actually kind of started to work out where the line was, because they went a little bit too reckless at times in the first 2 tests. But in the last 3 tests, I thought that version of Bazball, where it was aggressive, where they went on the front foot with the bat, where they really did try and take the draw out of the equation, but still played positively and played sensibly to a large degree. I thought that was a very infectious style. I really liked it.
They did well. This Test match, they've dominated it. Well, this Test match, the 5th Test match, they dominated us. 4th Test match, they dominated us. We all know about the rain. The 3rd Test is the one I have the huge problem with. When England were batting in their first innings. They were trailing by 150 and they were 5 down. And all of a sudden we wanted to bowl short to Ben Stokes. For all of a sudden, that we had this Bazball on its knees. On its knees during that test match. We dominated that test match. It was only for one madness error of Pat Cummins' captaincy. This is why I said I'll take Ben Stokes, where we just wanted to bowl short to Ben Stokes and he was carting us over. If we were to stick to our plans, we would have won that test match. And I'll rephrase all this. If we had Steve Smith in that third test as captain, we would have won that test match. We would have won the series. England do what you want in the next two. So I think we stood up in this series outside the first two tests. We saw that in the third test. But the execution was poorly done by Pat Cummins. And that's where I have the huge problem with it. Now, let's say we're going to have a 6-test match, a six test. Right? Let's just put that out there. Winner takes all, no draws, endless test match, whatever. I still believe that we'd win that 6-test match. I'd still believe. If we executed the right combination. Test 4, test 5, credit to England. They smashed us. They would have won this series if it wasn't for the rain. But the third test match, I will always have a problem with this because let's face it, we had Bazball on its knees. They needed 150. They were trailing by 150 with 5 down when Ben Stokes came out. And this guy just capitulated, as in Pat Cummins, the captain, capitulated. And that's why I'll always have a problem with that is the third test match. But our system does hold up, and we should have won that series.
Just going back to Bazball from my perspective, the one thing I don't like is I do like the kind of no consequences attitude. There are always consequences. If you fail for 5 years, you're not going to have a place in any team. So there are ultimately consequences to the actions you have in a side. But that kind of taking the pressure off, go out and be yourself kind of stuff. I mean, we'll talk about Zach Crawley a little bit, I'm sure, soon. Because he's certainly had a fantastic series. You can't argue with that. He's been terrific at the top of the order with Ben Duckett. And I do really like that, the fact that you can, because I think there's been too many times in the past with English teams where they've had that fear of failure, where they've always had the axe has been just over the back of their necks. And if one more failure, then you're going to be out, and everybody talking about them going to get dropped and what have you. And there is that little bit more of a safety net. I don't want it to go too far, though, because I think you need to have some kind of jeopardy when you're playing, and you need to have somebody maybe behind you. You need to have that competition for places. So you can't just make it 11 or 12 shirts or 15 for a squad, and that's all we're going to pick. So there do have to be consequences. There do have to be, for somebody that's not performing. But I think the way that Brendan McCullum's gone in there and he's kind of lightened the mood a little bit, they certainly are playing for him, and they certainly are playing for Ben Stokes. And that is manifesting itself in a team that isn't, well, you could say was maybe a bit careless in a couple of instances in the first 2 test matches, but the carefree kind of cricket that they're playing as if they're playing on a Sunday park with their mates is actually going out there into the middle. And we're probably seeing the best of some players as a result of that. So I really like, but the one thing I don't like is that the constant to the media, we don't mind losing. Because you pay professionals, you're professional cricketers, you're playing for your country. You should mind losing. And I know what they're trying to say. I know they're trying to kind of take away the pressure. If we go for a win, we're more likely to go for a win if we don't fear defeat. And I can see that from a psychological point of view. But to actually verbalize that to the media and then therefore to the public that we don't mind losing, I think isn't the right thing to do. But I am being absolutely won over and seduced and wooed by Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes and Bazball. I think it's been fantastic to watch. And the fact they've done it against your Aussies, and they've gone toe-to-toe with your Aussies, and they could quite easily, you wouldn't need to actually change the narrative of some of the test matches too much, have won this series 5-0.
Well, I think all but the 4th test match and kind of the 5th test match, I think it could have been either way. England could have won the first 3 test matches. It's been that close. Australia could have won the first 3 test matches. It's been probably the most closest series regarding session by session, probably in any Ashes series history.
There's a kind of a cliche you say sometimes on commentary, and it's kind of like this next session, this next hour is huge.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes a little bit artificial because you're trying to make add a little bit of excitement for the listeners or whatever. But genuinely, in this series, apart from Old Trafford, the irony was Old Trafford was the most one-sided of the Test matches. It was the only one that ended in a draw. All the rest of them were like that all the way through, weren't they? Australia playing well, and England getting a couple of wickets, and it was just kind of who was going to get the noses in front, and nobody really ever did until the final straight. It was fantastic, and that was 5-day Test matches, all 5 days, absolutely brilliant.
Well, exactly right. Session by session, Australia won that session, Australia win the next session, or it looks like Australia doubling. Oh no, England win that just as much. So and that's why I said it could go. The first 3 Test matches could have gone either way. As I keep mentioning this damn test, the third test where we were this close, and yet we let it slip, and in England dominated after that.
I'll buy you the DVD of that for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch it. So ironically, someone bought me the 2005 DVD, and I said I don't want to watch that. I'd rather watch the 2006-7 DVD. Much better series in my point of view. But no, I won't be watching that, James. But no, it has gone either way, tit for tat. Just as one team's getting dominated, the other team comes back, except for Old Trafford where the rain. But in my opinion, I want to say 2-2 is a fair result, but we were this close from winning the series, this close, and until we play England again, I'm always going to think, we were this tiny bit away from winning this series, and we let it slip. So,
from an English perspective, we can say we were this close from
exactly
because there was nothing between the two teams. So
exactly, and
it is a fair result, I think.
And that's a fair statement. If you said that, if you want to say that, I can't disagree with that. And probably should have won. To make it worse, probably could have won 4-0, James, or even 5-0. It's those 3 were that close. So, and without the rain, England would have won that. So it could have been 5-0 England, and I wouldn't disagree with that either. Probably in retrospect, that would have given us the biggest wake-up call. Was 5-0. Boy, would I lost it. Don't worry about that. But no, it's been session by session the closest Ashes series I can remember. Yeah. I don't even think 2005 was this close regarding session by session.
No, I agree because there were some sessions in that which were dominated one way or the other. So I totally agree. It's been absolutely absorbing. And I think anybody that's watched it hasn't enjoyed it. I think the players have all enjoyed playing in it as well. I think all of the media guys that have been there have absolutely loved every single second of it. And it's not just been some very good cricket at times. There's been some poor cricket at times, and that can lead to good sessions as well, because when you get poor sessions, it can be exciting to watch. So it's been good and bad, but they've been engaging sort of sessions to watch. There's been controversy along the way. We've had the Carey stumping of Bairstow. We've had a few other things as well. Sort of fan behaviour in the Lord's long room. All of those kind of stories as we've gone through too. And you're
going to mention the cricket ball, the change of the cricket ball in the fifth test,
the cricket ball in the fifth test as well. So because I mean, I kind of said on Twitter, it was these things happen. They do happen. And there was a session I think at Headingley. Where Australia got the ball changed, and then all of a sudden that started doing something as well. But there was a distinct. I mean, I think all English people, now the series is over and there's no point in kind of trying to get a bit of bravado in. I think most English people would say the ball they got as the replacement was a bit shinier than the other one. It certainly looked a bit newer.
Yeah, just a tad shiny.
Yeah.
And then
the umpires didn't have a great time in that fifth test, did they? Because they miscalculated the number of overs that were supposed to be played in that final session. The ball replacement thing was their error. It wasn't England cheating or Australia doing anything to change the results. It was it was neutral umpires making, I think, probably quite a dodgy call with the ball. I'm not going to. It led to some very exciting cricket from an English point of view, but I think if it had been the other way around, English fans would have been absolutely livid by it. But yeah, there's been all sorts. It's had a bit of everything, hasn't it? The only thing we've probably not had is a run out at the non-strikers end mancads, or whatever we call it these days.
God help us if that happened. Jesus.
We were saying actually, Lucas, on another WhatsApp group I'm a member of, we were all kind of waiting for the Stuart Broad finale, and he obviously delivered with that, didn't he? But, some fantastic scenes there for Stuart Broad and his family. But if he'd only just got that last wicket by mancadding the non-striker, that would have been, what a way to bow out that would have been.
I don't think I could do this interview if that happened, because I'd be applauded by this. Wouldn't be the first thing.
He said during the series, didn't he, that Ollie Robinson had become the most hated Australian. He made a comment on Twitter. How have I lost that title? Nobody told me. But he could have got it back with a mancad, couldn't he? He could have got it back.
Yeah, he would have definitely got that back. And especially if he did that in Australia, I don't think he would have came out alive. But in all fairness, like, it adds to the drama though. I think even back in 2005 was controversy. Board himself was controversy, and I think where he didn't walk his ball off Ashton. So it wouldn't be the first time Board had a controversial incident in the Ashes.
But did you see that they played him that? It's almost like a square cut, a late cut anyway to Slip, wasn't it? And then he didn't walk, and they played him that back on the pitch. And he was watching it, and they were all just kind of sniggering and stuff. And I think he's basically had to live with that ever since, in the same way that Steve Smith's had to live with his thing. But I think Broad kind of wears the boos and the jeers from the Aussie crowd as a bit of a badge of honour. I think he quite likes it. Well,
he plays the heel pretty well, doesn't he? He loves it. So as long as it's respectful, usually it's not. But no, I think Broad plays a good heel, and controversy aside, he'll go down as one of the all-time great bowlers.
Well, should we talk about them now? Because we've obviously with England, Moeen, really nice scenes that, I think, because Broad put his arm around Moeen and they walked off together. Moeen looked a little bit sheepish, like it's supposed to be your thing, Stuart, and he kind of took us a couple of steps back.
What am I doing here?
And then Broad brought him back in again, and he wasn't quite sure whether he was supposed to be clapping or whether he was supposed to be waving Moeen. But it was a lovely 10 seconds as they walked off together. So we're not going to see those two again in Ashes series, or indeed any Test series now, because Moeen's confirmed that he's not going to be playing Test cricket anymore. In terms of the other England players, Jimmy Anderson looks like he wants to continue. He said that he's going to carry on, which I think from England's bowling ranks, that's actually a good thing, to lose both Broad and Anderson at the same time. Whether Jimmy plays every single Test, whether he's just a squad member at times on overseas trips or something, he's a fountain of knowledge, and he's an experienced head, and he can provide them with a lot of help, can't he, as the seamers could progress. So everybody else from the England team will be certainly available for selection for the next Test series they play in about 5 years' time, or maybe 6 months. That's it. 6 months' time in India. For Australia, though, we've probably said goodbye to David Warner on English shores, but he's hoping to retire in Australia this winter if he's still selected. There's some debate about that. I know Usman Khawaja's 36. He's probably unlikely to return for Australia. How do you see that team going into the future for Australia?
Well, first of all, on David Warner, I don't think David Warner's had a bad series. I think he's had a good series. Unfortunately, he hasn't converted his starts.
He had the better one than he did 4 years ago.
Oh yeah. But as far as the Warner Broad situation, I know Broad got him a couple of times in that third Test match, but I think he's majorly won that battle. I think Wokes has had more success in him than Broad. But no, David wasn't the worst batsman on this tour. Khawaja, I don't think will be there. I think Steve Smith will be there, probably his last series captaining. Nathan Lyon, probably last series. I think he'll go after that. The one area of concern that I have is the bowlers. I think at times Cricket Australia relying on the big three. By big three, I mean Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark. Cummins will be there for sure. You won't be captaining Pat. Steve Smith will be. Trust me on that. I think it's in Australia's best interest that I know Stark he was very good this series. He probably deserved man of the series.
Well, Well, he got
And
it for
Hazel-
Australia, didn't he?
Yeah, he got it. Yeah. He deserved it. I can't complain with that. I think the bigger picture. Now we've got a 3-test series against Pakistan and West Indies. I would like to see. I don't want to retire any players, but I would like to see Hazelwood, Stark, not be selected. I would like bowlers like Steketee. Steketee is a quick in Queensland. Has a tremendous average of 25. Taking over
Just played for
200.
Yorkshire.
Yeah, so you know all about him. Good young bowler. The bowler also, Lance Morris, the wild thing as we call him, bowls 150 clicks. Averages 21 in Australia last year at the Sheffield Shield. Was very close to playing in India, very, very close. But they went with Stark. I think at times we rely on the big three way too much. And when, there was an interesting quote that Cummins made. He said, the bowlers are exhausted. Well, Matt, you're the captain. You can rotate your bowlers at any time.
I'm surprised Michael Nessa never got a go because he's been in fantastic form for Glamorgan.
And this is what I'm talking about, James. We just didn't want to play him. Michael Nessa is a fine bowler, and look what he did in the English summer at County. People are going to say, "Well, he
scored loads of runs as well.
Yeah.
He can bat.
Yeah, he can bat as well. Absolutely, he can bat. And we didn't. The only thing he did was carry the drinks. So there's too much reliance on the big three. I said Cummins will be there. I would prefer Morris and Steketee to be part of the next England series instead of Stark and Hazelwood. I wouldn't mind if Stark and Hazelwood are on the squad, but I would like those two bowlers to be part of the rotation heavily. And I think we got to bleed these players. I would like to see Steketee and Lance Morris debut. Hardy's another one from WA. He's more of an all-rounder. I like to see him debut in the Pakistan or West Indies series. Jimmy Pearson's another keeper from Queensland. I like to see him debut. I think from Australia's point of view, I think it's, especially if England are going to make these pitches, these hard, flat wickets in England, I think it's best interest that we start bleeding Morris and Steketee into this team for the next Ashes series in England. Now, with the Australian Ashes coming along, they won't be pitches like that. There'll be green tops, like we saw in South Africa last year where Test had ended in 2 days, pitches like that. But I still think it's important to bleed these guys before the Ashes series because I think for too long we've been relying on those big three, fine bowlers, Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, no complaints. They'll go down as Australian all-time greats when it's all said and done. But I think we're relying on them too much. As far as the batsman goes, I like to see two opening batters. Tim Ward, a Tasmanian batsman that does play on green tops. Bryce Street is another one that plays in Queensland. Unfortunately, their last Sheffield season has been very poor. They've probably gone away. But look out for those two names. Another one I want to mention heavily is Will Sutherland. Okay. I think he can be a very good all-rounder. I actually like him. I watched him in the Shield final. He's the first person ever in Shield history to take a 5-wicket haul and 100 in the same match for the Shield final. He's got a lot of potential. I like to see him being bled as well. So I think we need to step away from these players and say, you know what, we want to go forward with these players in the future. I don't want to retire them. Don't get me wrong there. No one misquote me. I don't want them retired, but I like to see the young players get more rotation. I think that's what we badly missed this series, is rotation. We did it with Boland. The pitches didn't suit Boland, but we missed a trick not playing Nisa. This is to an extent is why I don't like bowlers as captain as bowler, sorry. Because Pat Cummins was nowhere near the bowl. I'm going to give you a stat here, James. This is a stat here. Last year, Pat Cummins averaged 22 with the ball. This year alone, he's averaged 34. That's a hell of a drop-off. You're losing one world-class bowler to replace by an below-average bowler at best. That's a huge drop-off. And when you're in a series like England, the Ashes, or in India, pacemen don't really work in India, so I'll excuse that. But in the big series, if you lose a world-class bowler and replace him with a below-average, you're not going to win, James. It'd be, especially when you lose Nathan Lyon early in that series. It's very hard, and I think if Cummins wasn't the captain, I think he would have been dropped or managed or whatever you want to call it, and Nisa would have came in. But you're not going to drop a captain, are you? So this is why I'll never agree with bowlers being captain, James.
Well, Pat, if you're watching, I know your wife's from Harrogate, so if you ever want to come and play a series in a season or a full year in Yorkshire, then come and see us. We'll look after you. We won't be like
I think Mitchell Stark did that, didn't he? Didn't he play for Yorkshire?
Oh yeah, he's a Yorkie. Mitchell Stark now a Yorkie.
Yeah.
We have loads of questions coming in, by the way, so we'll get to your questions. Football stars. We've got Sal, we've got Bulldozer Williams asking questions here. And we're going to take a very short break and play an advert from the sponsors of the Cricket Badger website. And then we'll be back on the other side of this. We're going to basically go through the players, give them our marks out of 10 for the series and pick out who we think were the best ones and the worst ones of the summer we've just seen.
Feel the difference with the superior full grooming trimmer by Manscaped. It's waterproof to use in the shower, features skin-safe technology to help reduce cuts, equipped with an LED light for those hard-to-see areas, and has long-lasting wireless charging. Order online at manscaped.com.
And welcome back, everybody. And thank you to manscaped.com for their continued support of the Cricket Badger podcast. Anyway, we're coming towards the, into the last half an hour of our Ashes podcast as we've gone through. Lucas, thank you for joining me as we've gone through this summer. It's been a pleasure to have you with me and watching your rants on WhatsApp, etc. has been very, very good indeed. I'm going to put the Australians to you, and you can put the English to me if you like as we go through. And let's start with the top of the order because the teams haven't, in terms of batting, haven't really changed at all, have they? As we've gone through the series, but Usman Khawaja, he's been top of the list here, 49.6 his average. He's got the most runs in the entire Ashes series, 16 ahead of Zach Crawley, who we'll talk about in a second. But I think Uzzie's been fantastic. He's been the rock at the top of the order and played really sensibly.
Yeah, Osman, for a lot of years, Osman wasn't even picked in this team. He was dropped in and out. A lot of people questioned his technique against seam bowling. Very good player of spin, always been a good player of spin. But seam bowling was the issue, but he's fixed that. I'm not sure about his technique on the back foot to spinners. That's it's a bit iffy, but that's what he's comfortable with. Who am I to judge? But no, he's had a tremendous series, probably our pick of the batsman, maybe. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to digest this, James, to the batsman, because I know, let's say for Usman, for example, has had one century yet. He hasn't really made another one. I think this is the first series. I might be wrong here, where there hasn't been a batsman scoring 200s in the same series. I might be wrong there, but it's a tough one to judge. Usman statistically looks good, but he's only made the 100. We're going to mention Steve Smith, same thing. Joe Root, same thing. So there really hasn't been one player that's completely dominated with the bat, like we saw last time with Steve Smith. Or like we saw last.
Do you think, in a way, that's made it a better series? Because we haven't. We haven't had a Steve Smith batting for 28 hours a Test match and just taking the game away from somebody. It's been nobody's ever completely dominated. And the bowlers have had their moment in the sun this time. It's been quite an even contest.
Well, it's been interesting because I didn't predict that. I thought there'd be, I think batsmen galore going to make hundreds every Test where the pitch is going to be. But it's been far from that, James. Bowlers have had their fair share. And it's been even. To my surprise with these pitches. So I'll give credit to the groundsmen and the curators. I think they've done really, really well in this series.
What mark out of 10 would you give Aussie then?
I give him a... See, I have to think about it. See, that's because there's no domination, but I'm going to give him an 8. I think he's been our best batsman. I'll give him an 8.
Okay. I'm going to go down then. Actually, I've got the wrong chart up here. let's go to his opening partner, David Warner, who we've talked about already. But in terms of his score out of 10?
David Warner, I think he'd be very disappointed because he's had a lot of starts. He's made 250s, a lot better than last series where I gave him a 0. He just needs to convert on his starts. So I think if he would have turned them in even to one century, would have probably gave him a 7 or 8. But I'm going to give him a 5. If I give him a 4 or 3, that means he's probably the worst batsman. He wasn't the worst batsman on this tour, so I'm going to give him a 5.
Okay, let's go to the England openers then. Zach Crawley, who somebody actually reminded me this morning about a tweet I'd done at the start of the summer where I said something like picking Zach Crawley for this Ashes is like putting him in the town centre in the stocks and getting people to throw tomatoes at him. He's going to be completely exposed. And he's proved me wrong, hasn't he? Because he was absolutely brilliant. And I don't mind being wrong when an Englishman triumphs. And 480 runs, average of 53.33, highest score of 189, strike rate of 88.72. 100, 2 other 50s. Hit the first ball of the Ashes for 4, cracked it through the covers, and never really looked back from that. He was tremendous. So I can't fault Zach Crawley, and I'm really pleased for him. Doesn't mean I'm wrong, by the way, because when he was struggling before, he was so loose outside the off stump. He was a walking wicket, and he didn't deserve to be picked. There's a kind of I don't know quite where I stand on this because they've given him 30 odd test matches to prove himself. That's a lot of test matches. And as George DeBell often says on his Ask George, if you'd picked a random opener out of the county setup, by now he'd have probably got a couple of hundreds. Because the county players would have been good enough on a good wicket somewhere to have got 100 against an attack. But high pressure situation, the Ashes. And Zach Crawley has gone toe to toe with the Australian bowlers and dominated at the top of the order. Ben Duckett, to a slightly lesser degree, but has been very good. 321 runs, an average of 35.66. You put those two together in an England side that has been struggling like mad for opening consistency. That has been brilliant. And Zach Crawley's worked very hard. It's obvious that he's been in the nets. He's really thought about his game. He's tightened up. He's got into line a little bit more. He's got his nose over the ball a little bit more, played it later. And it's made a big difference. He's still not somebody I'd want to bat for my life because he is. There's a wicket. You always feel when you're watching him, he's going to get out any second. But he's managed to become a little bit more consistent. And Brendan McCullum, who's always said, when we looked at him, we can see the ceiling is so high. You can start to see that a little bit more now after he's knuckled down and he's got the runs against Australia. Fair play to him. He's done the job. Going back to the Australian middle order then, Marnus has been batting at number 3. You've had Steve Smith at number 4 and Travis Head at number 5. Smith averaged 37.29, Head 36.2, and Labuschagne 32.79. That just before you jump in, from an English perspective, it was that middle order that I feared. I thought they might actually outplay the English middle order. If Smith had another season like he's had before, Labuschagne's always been a good player, but has always been somebody that's averaged less overseas than he's averaged at home. They didn't really stand up, did they?
They see again. They've made a century each. All those players you mentioned, except for Head. Yet the rest outside of the century, they've been poor. They've been very poor. Labuschagne looked a walking wicket at times, especially to Stuart Broad. Redeemed himself in that drawn test match with that 100. Does 100 make a series? Does one century define you as a player? The jury's out on that one. Steve Smith, same thing. Had a lot of starts, couldn't convert. Travis Head, same thing. So I'm like a broken record here. A lot of starts, couldn't convert. Has definitely problems with the short game. I don't know why he has problems with the short ball game. Playing at Adelaide Oval where the scrub boundaries are pretty short.
There's a stat about him that when in his first 20, 30 runs, he averages something really low against the short ball. Yeah. Once he gets in past 40, he averaged something like about 85 against it.
See, I heard Mark Taylor say that he's a nervous starter. I don't buy that. I don't think a nervous starter to me is like a Cameron Green. I've mentioned I hope you bring him up. My God. but I've mentioned Cameron Green. It takes 30, 40. He looks like he's going to get out every single ball. I don't see that with Travis Head. He plays his shots naturally.
I like Travis Head.
Yeah. Well, he was Bazball James. He was smoking Pakistan.
Just looking at their strike rates, the three we've mentioned, and David Warner was 56.21, his strike rate. Labuschagne 46.99, Smith 56.09, and Travis Head's strike rate throughout the series 71.11. So that's only 7 runs per 100 balls behind Harry Brook, who you would say has been smoking it all over the place when he's been in.
Exactly. But no, the middle order has underperformed the majority of this series. As much as I love Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne, they've been poor outside their centuries.
Yeah.
To give them a rating, Labuschagne 5, Steve Smith probably a 5, and Travis Head a 5. Could have done a hell of a lot better, and I'm only giving a 5 to them because of the centuries.
Could have been worse, but could have been better. That's basically the skill report, isn't it?
Exactly. So they were average, but I don't want to give them 4s or 3s because they did make a century, and that'd be very tough. But they could have done a hell of a lot more.
England's middle order has been a bit weird, hasn't it? Because it changed around. Because obviously Ollie Pope started in the number 3 berth and got injured, sadly for him. Kind of a little bit more on that in a second, because I think that changed, the enforced change, because Ollie Pope in the 2 test matches was averaging 22.5, hadn't really got going in the series. And I think him coming out of the side, actually, bringing Moeen Ali in, he wouldn't have been my pick necessarily, but he came in and he did very well and put his hand up to go up to number 3. Scored 180 runs at 25.71, got a 50 in that final game. So I think him coming into that role, bringing Ollie Pope out, actually got England a far more balanced team in the longer run. Joe Root at number 4. He's just Joe Root at number 4. Every time we do one of these, Lucas, I kind of say the same things about Joe Root. He's just awesome, isn't he? Goes in. Serenely makes progress. He nearly got that second 100 that you were talking about at the in the last match, and he got a ball that kept really low on him and got without for 91, wasn't he? But he averaged 51.5 across the English, across the Ashes series. 412 runs for him. He's got to be an 8 because he's right up there. For him, he's probably, I mean, knowing him, probably looks back across the 9 innings he's played and thinks he could have got 200 more runs, but he's a very, very good player. Ben Stokes as captain, Ben Stokes as batter, 405 runs, 155 top score, 45 average. Ben Stokes, when he came in at number 3, by the way, I actually really liked that because Moeen had a groin injury, didn't he, in the second innings or first innings, and Ben Stokes came in and he looked the part at number 3 because he plays straight and he plays well. He's capable of hitting the bad balls for 4, but he's capable of playing a 4 defensive. It might be something that we look at. I know I've said in the past, I think Ben Stokes down the order is very valuable because he can bat with the tail, but Johnny Bairstow can do that too. So Ben Stokes at 3 isn't the worst thing in the world. I think for Ben, I think his captaincy was great. I think his batting was great. Obviously, unfortunately, he couldn't bowl more. I'm going to give him an 8 as well because I can't really separate him and Rooty.
What did you? What did you give Moeen Ali?
I haven't got to him yet.
Oh, okay.
Harry Brook at 5, averaged 40.33. He came in off a stellar start to his Test career. Maybe looked a little bit frantic at the start of the series. It's a massive series to walk into as a youngster, isn't it? But I think he'd found his feet by the end of it, and he was looking very composed towards the end of it. Didn't get the 100 that he would have liked, but he got 450s along the way, which is more than anybody else in the series, and 363 runs at 40.33. So 7 out of 10, I think, for Harry Brook. I think he'll have learnt a lot from the series as well to take forward with him. And he's a real player, Harry Brook. We're going to see an awful lot more about him further down the line. Let's move to your 2 openers, shall we? In fact, before we go to the openers, let's just quickly whiz through the questions because it'd be wrong of me to ignore them. And we've had some questions and comments. Football Star says, hi, Lucas. Smith should be captain. Agreeing with you. Please make Smith as captain of the ODI team now, he says. So that's Football Stars.
No, I
Sal says,
disagree. I disagree with that.
Make
He
Smith
shouldn't be
captain for the
anywhere near the
ODI team,
ODI team.
please.
He shouldn't be anywhere near the ODI team, Steve Smith, in my opinion. Captaincy or not, I think he should remain as a Test player. I don't think Australia need him in the ODI team, and they certainly don't need him in the T20 leagues or World Cups. If he wants to play IPL, that's fine. He wants to play Big Bash, fine, so be it. But I would not make him captain of the ODI team. He's probably got 3-4 years left. I would want him to focus solely on Test cricket. He can play his T20 in the IPL, the Big Bash, or the English 100, whatever he wants. But let him mainly focus on the Test match.
Okay. Bulldozer Williams says, it was great seeing Australia retain the Ashes. It might have been for you, Bulldozer Williams. It wasn't for me. And he says, how do you see the T20 and ODI series between England and New Zealand going? And he says, with the mention of ODI cricket, how do you see the ODI World Cup going? Two massive questions there, Bulldozer, that we can't really shoehorn into the Ashes review. We'll come on to those. We'll get Lucas back on in the future. And we'll do the white ball stuff and the World Cup and everything further down the line. But looking forward to both of those, I think, as we go forward. Let's go back to the teams. Cummins and Marsh coming into the all-rounder slots at various stages during the summer. I thought Marsh was tremendous, to be honest. I thought he came in, that Headingley innings, the 118 he scored there, averaged 50 throughout the summer, went along at a fair lick as well, 66.84 strike rate. Whereas Cam Green in his 3 tests just got past 100 runs, averaged 20.6. And with the ball, wasn't maybe quite as potent as I was expecting him to be.
With Mitch Marsh, I thought it was a horrible idea. I think I mentioned this to you on the WhatsApp. I think it was a horrible idea not bringing in Nisa. I think that was the time to bring in Michael Nisa. Now, Mitch Marsh had that fantastic test match where he scored that 100. After that, not so much. But this is the problem with Mitch Marsh's career. He's capable of this. We know that. But consistency, he's very bad. He's either have 1 good game, 7 bad games. And that's why he's been in and out of the team. Yes, he's had injury problems, mostly caused by him punching rules and not.
Well, it's hard to get consistent when you've not been picked for 3 years.
It is. But, in the past, the South African tour. I'll go back to this tour again. The South Africa tour, he made 100 in his first Test match. After that, he failed to get a 50. So I think the problem with him is consistency. I think Cam Green can take a lot out of Mitch Marsh. If you look at Mitch Marsh's starts, very fluent, knows what to play, tremendous power, just goes through the shot. So I think Cam Green can take a lot out of Mitch Marsh's because he's too nervous, defends, takes about 30, 40 balls to get him to stride. And that's not really good at this level when you're against world-class attacks like England was. Mitch Marsh rating, I'm going to give him a 5. Bowling, he was actually okay with the bowling. It's hard to judge off 2 tests, but I've gave the rest a 5. Based on their centuries. So I'm going to have to give Mitch Marsh a 5. Cameron Green, awful series. Here come all the comments saying it's showtime. Lucas after Cam Green. I'm not after Cam Green. I'm just stating facts. He had a point to shut. He could have shut my mouth up completely up, James. Could have made centuries. Could have did what Mitch Marsh did.
Cam Green, if you're watching, please shut him up, please.
But bowling wasn't near as potent as I thought. Having said that, he didn't really get the overs in, but he still wasn't that potent. But batting, he's just too much of never starter. I wish, you mentioned with Ollie Pope, and who's Ian Bell that you compared them to. Maybe Ian Bell could give Ollie Pope some advice, or maybe Mitch Marsh could give him some advice on how to start well. Just play through the ball. Rating, Cam Green, sorry, champion, 1.
Okay.
I think
I'd love to know, actually. I mean, obviously not off the back of what I said, but I'd love to know if Ollie Pope has ever spoken to Ian Bell and picked his brains, because I think he could learn a lot from players like him and take a bit with him, because certainly he's a good player. We can all see that. His first-class record is brilliant. But in Test cricket, not being quite consistent enough. I know he's been Obviously moved up to number 3. That's a tough gig, but not quite there for me just at the moment. And if anybody's going to be the fall guy, people asking me, how do I get Ben Folkes into this side and Johnny Bairstow? Well, I think that's Ollie Pope would probably be the one to stand aside right now from England's 11. If you're going to try and do that, because Ben Folkes surely has got to be the keeper in India. Let's talk about the two keepers. Bairstow.
I got a quick question. And Lucas,
Okay.
you hate Cam Green because he's from Perth. It's got nothing to do with that. Nothing to do that he's from WA. I couldn't care less if Cam Green was from India, England, New Zealand. It does not make a difference to me. I'm only seeing what I'm seeing. So
You can say that. Everybody knows you're just biased. The Bairstow against Carey. Bairstow played all 5 tests, 322 runs, at high score of 99 not out, nearly another 100. 40.25 average with the bat, strike rate of 77.03, which was right up there. Only Zach Crawley, I think, and Harry Brook just ahead of him in terms of strike rate for England. It's amazing strike rate. Joe Root 74.77 and never looked like he was trying to butcher attacks. He just glided it around 1s and 2s, kept the scoreboard ticking, the occasional boundary. Just an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, Joe Root. Can't speak highly enough of him. The occasional little Root scoop over down towards third man as well for 6 runs, just to keep his strike rate up. But so Johnny Bairstow, good series with the bat. Carey averaging 22.22, bang on 200 runs, and a lot less of a strike rate. But in terms of gloves, I think Carey probably just took the prize. But I thought Bairstow, as the series went on, he was not up to speed in the first 2 tests. But as the series went on, by the 5th test, I think he was keeping pretty well. That catch he took on the final day was a real instinct catch, wasn't it? Again, one to his right. That was all reflexes, hand-eye, and just get your hand out there and let it stick. And I thought he was keeping really well towards the end of the series. Not necessarily the best keeper I've ever seen, but he was certainly more than adequate by the end of the series, I think.
Well, take out the first 2 test matches for Bairstow. I think he's been fantastic. From a keeping perspective, he was scratchy because he hasn't played for a while. But I'm really glad England did keep Bairstow as their keeper. I'm really glad with that.
It's just that it's proof, isn't it, that if you're actually loyal to a player, you maybe get the best out of them. If you reckon, I mean, obviously, if they picked me and were loyal to me for 50 tests, they would not be rewarded. Because I would not be test level. But if they see, everybody's seen Johnny Bairstow in the past, but even in like a new player like Harry Brook, you see them, or Zach Crawley's a good example. You see them in the nets, you see them as people, you see, you judge as a coach, an international coach, what their ceiling is, and actually think this guy is actually, we'll suffer 10 bad test matches. This guy is worth sticking with because ultimately the rewards will be great. Bairstow's not. There's not even a conversation about Johnny Bairstow. No. We just know he's good enough.
Yeah. Well, from the second test, he at 10 out of 10. I didn't see him doing any wrong. I know people questioned his technique when he caught catches, not rising up. That's just garbage to me. The reflex catch in the 5th test, that it takes a lot of hand-eye coordination. That's a lot of practice as well. That's probably one of the hardest catches to catch. But there was another one in the 4th test where he caught the ball and his arm was behind his body. That was the catch that people were criticizing. Well, maybe he didn't get there. But I thought that was a load of garbage. That's one of the toughest catches I think any keeper's taken this series. So from a keeping perspective, I'm glad they stick with Johnny Bairstow. From a series perspective, damn it, I wish they would have dropped you, Johnny. That would have been really nice.
All you Aussies were crying out for him to be kept in the side at one stage.
But definitely wasn't me. That's for damn sure. Now on to Alex Carey's keeping. Fantastic. Alex Carey didn't really do much wrong. I know there was a situation in the 5th test where he went to dive and he dropped it. Lack of footwork with that one, Alex, but his keeping was just as good.
Everybody drops them. Everybody drops them. Whether you are Ben Folkes, Johnny Bairstow, Alex Carey, or Fred Smith down the local park. You might be think yourself in your team as being really a great keeper, but the greatest keepers in the world have dropped catches.
Well, no one's perfect in anything, whether it's batting, bowling, or whatnot. Whether you're in the slips or in the outfield, everyone drops them. Ratings, I'll leave you to Bairstow's. I'll do keeping rating for Bairstow. I'm going to give him an 8 for the 2 test matches. He was perfectly fine. Brilliant. Carey, I'm going to give a 9. Little mistake in the 5th test. Batting wise, he was very disappointing, Carey. I thought he would have a good series. If he didn't get out once to spinners, he got out half a dozen times, so he hasn't learned from India. Still wants to play the reverse sweep, which caused him all the problems in India. Love you, Alex, South Australian, but I'm sorry, mate, your batting gets a 3. Not good enough.
I think for Johnny...
And just on Johnny, I do fear for him a little bit in India because it's going to be very hard because I know when England toured India last time, Frokes was unbelievable. I do fear a bit for Johnny, but I hope England just keep him as the keeper. Even if he does make mistakes in the first test, I just hope they go on with it.
Because I think I mean, for in terms of marks for Johnny, after 2 test matches, they wouldn't have been very high, so it can't be a 10. But I think he's shown his usual belligerence. I think his batting has been very, very good. And I think his keeping has got, the kind of arc on his keeping has gone right up the graphs like that, isn't it? So, he's done nothing wrong towards the end of the series. Fully deserves to get any plaudits he gets. And I think I'll give him a 7 because, maybe the 3 that I'm taking off with for the first 2 tests, although he batted well in one of those as well. So, but I'll give him a very strong 7. I think he's put 2 fingers up inside of his gloves so nobody can see to all of his critics there. In terms of the future of England's keeping position, I won't be at all surprised, if they don't pick horses for courses and actually talk to them. I think Johnny will be in the side regardless because they know what he can do. That innings he played at Old Trafford, there's very few players in the world, let alone in England, can play in innings like that. I think folks will keep in India, and I think Johnny will probably go up to number 3 or be somewhere in that batting lineup. And I think they'll just there's a danger with that because Johnny's been messed about so often. And that's often been my frustration with Johnny is that how can you expect him to play consistently when you're changing what he does all the time? But I think folks will keep in India and Bairstow will have the bat. And probably by the time we get back to England next summer, Bairstow will be back behind the stumps and folks will be disregarded and everybody will be on Twitter saying what an absolute travesty that is. But that's sport. That's baseball, everybody. Exactly. Let's move on to the bowlers because we haven't got too much long left. We're going to go just over the hour mark. So I always try and keep these to about an hour. But let's go through your bowlers. I mean, obviously, Nathan Lyon. Give him a score and give him a pat on the back because he was great, and I hope he's getting better very, very soon. But you had the Todd Murphy came in his stead and played quite nicely, I thought, in the 5th test. And then you've got your main quicks as well. Quickly run through them, Lucas.
Nathan Lyon, I thought Nathan Lyon was absolutely fantastic. The 2nd test match where he took 4 wickets on one day and bowled 20 overs, nobody would have done that. If he would have kept playing, I thought he probably would have been our best bowler. So hard to give him 2 tests, but I'm gonna give him an 8. Stark
absolutely missed him, definitely. In England, England didn't miss him, but Australia definitely did, and Pat Cummins certainly did. Yeah,
like I said, he's the one bowler that we can't replace. Stark, fantastic series by Mitchell Stark. Did nothing wrong. He tries his guts out. You're gonna get 100% effort all the time from Stark. I've been a critical basher at times, but this series he's been fantastic. I think he's our best Australian player in my opinion. I'm going to give him a 9. He was fantastic. Cummins, captaincy 0, bowling 2. This wasn't the bowler.
He called once. He called right once.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Well. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's a bit harsh. 1. Just based on that. Thanks for reminding me.
0.
Bowling wise,
for goodness sake.
Bowling wise, like I said, his average this series was very poor. Wasn't the bowler. We lost a world class bowler and we've got a below average bowler. So I'm going to give him a 3. There was times where he looked good, but he just very poor this series. So a 3 overall, 3.
Okay. And
Hazelwood.
Hazelwood and Boland.
Yep. And Murphy was good. Not his fault. He didn't bowl the overs in the 4th test. Again, the captaincy of Cummins. Why pick him in the first place? Very hard to judge him on that. When he did bowl, he looked good.
I thought he was all right in the 5th test.
Yeah. So I'm going to give him a 5. I think he was good, but we'll never know what he would have done on that fourth test. Hazelwood looked good at times. Didn't really do much. I thought he was good in the 3rd test in patches. I'm going to give him a 5. Boland, pitches don't suit him. We saw one instance where in the 2nd test match where there was dark clouds, it was raining. He was zipping it all over the place. That's his conditions. That's what he does. Pitches didn't suit him. This is going to be a harsh mark, but it is what it is. I'm going to give him a 2.
2. You give him for his bowling. You give him more than you give Pat Cummins for his captaincy. That's an absolute scandal. And I apologise, Scott Boland, if you're watching on his behalf. I'm going to very quickly go through the England bowlers. Josh Tongue only played the one match in the end, didn't he? But bowled well in it and bowled well against Ireland. I'll give him a 5. Jimmy Anderson, bowling wise, dreadful, wasn't he? Dreadful's the wrong word.
The pitches didn't suit him. I don't understand that, James. The pitches didn't. You've got a bowler that it'll go down as probably one of the greatest seam bowlers of all time. You don't give him the pitches. I never understood that. I never really understand that.
I'm going to retract dreadful. I'm going to say probably frustrating for him.
Yeah.
Because as you said, the pitches weren't great. And by the time it got to the end of the series, I actually thought he was bowling a lot better and got absolutely no luck. He was beating the bat left, right, and centre, and nobody would give him an edge. And it kind of just added to the narrative. He's only got 4 wickets in this series, but he could have had in the last 2 tests. He could have had another 5 or 6 comfortably, and just didn't get any luck whatsoever. So Jimmy will carry on, and great stuff for that. Ollie Robinson, short and sweet from Ollie, wasn't it? He played 3 tests and played well, got wickets. I'd give him maybe a 6 or a 7 for Ollie Robinson for his bowling. Jimmy Anderson probably only gets a 3, but it's. There won't be probably the only series ever that he would get a mark like that from. Stuart Broad, magnificent. Great to see him bowing out so brilliantly and picking up the last 2 wickets, etc. was just fantastic. The bit before he got the 9th wicket of the innings when he just swapped the bails over and then got a wicket the next ball was just absolutely magnificent, wasn't it? Just absolutely, him in the Ashes to a T, wasn't it? Just kind of a bit of a showman, bit mischievous, likes the, lighting the touch paper with the crowd, and then going bang bang to finish the Ashes test off was tremendous. Got to give. I mean, he's one of the leading wicket taker, if not he's England's leading wicket taker. I'm not quite sure if he got past Mitchell Stark with those 2 wickets on the final day. He was very close between Stark and Broad, but. Broad gets an 8, comfortably an 8.
I thought he was the best player in this series. I would have gave him a 10. I thought he was
okay.
Very good.
No, you're not going to influence me. I'm not no peer pressure on here. Thank you very much. I'm going to save the best to last, really, because I actually think Wood and Wokes were England's best bowlers in the series. Wood, for different reasons. Wood came in at Headingley and bowled absolute rockets, 96.5 miles an hour at Headingley. Tail off towards the end, and towards the end, I don't know if you saw Ben Stokes' comments that he was on one leg basically by the end of this series and wasn't showing any pain to the Australians and gritting his teeth to bowl, but he was not up to the same speed towards the end. But absolutely brilliant to see him playing 3 test matches back to back and bowling absolute rockets. So he gets an 8 as well. And Chris Wokes, awesome. He's so unsung, Chris Wokes. Everybody loves him. There's not a person in cricket would say a bad word about Chris Wokes. And he's a very, very good player. In English conditions, he's averaging, 21, 22 with the ball? And it's just bonkers. Away from home, different gravy. Take his passport off him now. But in England, he's right up there. And England need to actually remember that. By the time they start the first test match of next summer and the summer afterwards, maybe, depending on how long a 34-year-old is going to go on for, play him in England, unleash him, and then put him in cotton wool and allow him to play some T20 matches in the winter. And that's Chris Wokes' future for the next 2 or 3 years, I hope. And he gets a 9 for me. I don't think he did anything wrong whatsoever, and he added important runs at Headingley with a bat as well. So Chris Wokes, take a bow. Nice to see him get some headlines throughout this series, rather than be kind of hidden behind in the second paragraph underneath somebody else's. But lovely bloke and a very, very fine player. So I'll give him a 9 to round off the scores.
We just quickly on rotation, you know,
I
didn't
give Moeen Ali a score.
You didn't give Moeen. I was waiting for this.
And he came in, answered the SOS. I don't know if you saw his comment about if Stokesy texts me again, I'm going to delete the message. So that's him done in Test cricket. I would have picked somebody else. I'd probably gone for Liam Dawson, or maybe even put Rian Ahmed in a Bazball suit and said, no repercussions, go for it, learn from the experience. But Moeen came in and did nobody, you can't criticise the guy. 25.71 with the bat, took wickets with the ball, and I thought bowled very nicely in the 5th Test. Once his finger had got hard again, he was coming out quite well. I'd give him a 6, I think, because he wasn't the star of the show. Wasn't the star of the show, but he wasn't bad.
I thought when he batted at 3 was absolutely fantastic, and the Australian bowlers didn't know where to bowl to him, didn't know where to bowl short, or didn't know where to bowl full. I probably would have gave him a 7.
Okay.
We'll see you in India, Mo. Trust me, we'll see you in India.
I don't think you will. I think he's got other plans for those months of the year. But I think, to be honest, when a fair play to him, he's got himself into a situation, Moeen Ali, where he's got a family, he's got offers for playing T20 franchise cricket around the world. He can quite easily make a very, very fine living by playing 3 weeks here and 4 weeks there, and then spend a lot of time with his wife and kids. Why wouldn't you? Good luck to him. And when he received the message from Ben Stokes, he was on the beach. I'm sure he'd probably be on the beach very soon again, and paying his family back for having to come back early from that holiday. So good luck to him in retirement. Good luck to Stuart Broad in the retirement. Thank you for the memories. To any Australians that we're not going to see again on these shores as well, good luck to you as well. Because although we love to hate you, and we do love you in the end, because it's cricket and it's all good stuff. The entertainment that is brought. I spent most of 2005 absolutely hating Ricky Ponting, hoping he'd be out next ball every single Test match. And listening to his commentary, he's one of the best around. I love listening to him now, and he comes across as a really nice guy. So,
wish he was our coach.
Ultimately, human beings, and you're not that bad, the Australians, are you? Really?
No, we're pretty good. We're pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm good, aren't I? I'm a pretty good guy.
No, this is where you say the English are good as well. Because this is typical Australian. Just take the compliment and then just not return it. We're finishing the series here. You're supposed to be good to me.
One through in the year and out the other. On Stuart Broad, no, we love to hate him, but like I said, he'll go down as one of the greatest bowlers of all time, along with James Anderson if he does retire. Looks like James Anderson will retire until he's 50. He might even play into his 60s. Who knows with him? But if this is the end for James Anderson, you'll go down as the greatest. Of course, Glenn McGrath is the best. But being second best isn't too bad. And maybe Stuart Broad top 5. But good luck to them. And good luck to Jimmy if you do retire.
I don't think Jimmy's going to. I think he will be in India. But
he'll play till he's 60.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because you kind of look at the averages, and Anderson and Broad are a bit higher than the likes of Steyn and McGrath and stuff like that. But longevity counts for a lot. The fact that you've taken, you've played for that long, and you've bowled that many overs, and you've carried on and on and on. Even Stuart Broad, he kind of looks young next to Jimmy Anderson. And then you think, why are you retiring? He's 36, isn't he? 37 nearly. So, and he's got a young family as well, and he wants to do other things with his life. Fair play. But Jimmy, I think, wants to get a little bit, squeeze every ounce of the Anderson genius out and try and get a few more Test matches. I looked at the stats the other day, Lucas, and obviously he's approaching 700 Test wickets. Excuse me, which is he's not too far away from at all. But if you actually add up all of his wickets across all formats of international cricket, he's very, very close to 1,000 across all formats. He's only something like about 24 away or something like that. So,
and this is why I have a feeling that he's eyeing on that now. I know James Anderson's always a team player, but when you get those records, James, you might get pushed into trying to break those records.
Well, I don't
So
blame you for doing that. You know,
yeah,
you're a
of
long time
course not. No,
retired.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're a
I,
long time retired. Once you've
yeah,
retired, you won't be coming back from that decision. So,
uh,
690 Test
yeah,
wickets, Lucas,
yeah,
269 ODI
mm,
wickets, which basically, I tweeted this the other day, and a lot of people responded saying, "Yes, we did," because I said, a lot of people forget that Jimmy
yeah,
Anderson is still the #1 ranked ODI bowler for England in terms of wickets taken, and
mm,
Stuart Broad was fourth. They retired so long ago, people have forgotten the fact that they ever played the white ball format. But
yeah,
690 Test wickets, 269 ODI wickets, and he's also got 18 in the T20 internationals. So I think he's got something like it was 23 or something required to get 1,000 wickets in all international cricket. Only 2 people have done that before, and he obviously needs another 10 wickets to get to 700 Test wickets. So I think that's where he's going to go. And then maybe once he's got past those figures,
yeah.
that's when you might sit down and think, well, what else is there for me to do?
Mm.
And that might be when he makes the decision. So Shalbal says Jimmy will play next England summer. I guess he will retire in the Manchester Test match. And there's the prediction from Shalbal. We'll find out, Shalbal, won't we? We will find out as we go further forward. Anyway, Lucas, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I am sure we will talk again very soon indeed. So enjoy your time off and away from the Ashes. Unfortunately, it's over 2 years before our next Ashes series, but we will talk again about other stuff, probably around the White Ball World Cup that's coming up or something along those lines.
Don't ask me for the white ball, James. I'm not going to do that. So you hear
You got to watch the ODI World Cup.
I might watch it. I might, but as everyone knows, if they're watching this, I'm a red ball traditionalist. I'm certainly not going to watch any T20 stuff. I might take a poke on the IDI stuff. If we do make the final, if it's England Australian final, then my word, I'll be here with James Butler, and I might even
like it then, will you? You glory hunter. Yeah. Honestly, this is typical Australian. I was too nice to you guys earlier. Absolute great galahs, whatever you call on neighbours. Anyway, Lucas, goodbye to you. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching and for listening as well. We have been the Gaurav Ayaan YouTube feed, and we have been the Cricket Badger podcast as we've taken you through the Ashes too. Been fantastic, hasn't it? Absolutely brilliant. And we will see you again soon, talking about all things cricket. Enjoy, everybody. Ta-ra.